In this week of matches, we have seen a number of penalties given for handball. Some seemingly fair, some ridiculous. There have been about 3 changes of the handball rule within the year. It has obviously affected the Premier League and other competitions, mainly making a lot of the referees look silly. And some of the handballs are clear cut, and you can say, yes, VAR made the right decision. And then others, you say, there was a very soft penalty, very rough on the team conceding. I know, Kevin, you took exception to, was it Manu match?
Of course, it was a money match.
No, I thought, so I am not the biggest fan of VAR, right?
Manchester United.
Definitely not, right? So whilst technology in football, I think it can work, I think it has to be phased in. So goal line technology works perfect. See? Half side where we're going.
Remember last season?
No, it doesn't actually.
Hold on, meaning the idea behind goal line technology.
Okay.
Perfect.
Fair.
When we're going into millimeters to determine offside, I think we're going crazy right now. See? Now in the Man U match, I think they got all the calls right. So VAR did well in that match. However, to be more specific on the handball rule, I think it's madness, right? I think there are a couple of things. If a player doesn't get an advantage from handling the ball, and if the player is within a yard of the person kicking the ball and them hand it beside them side, it cannot be a handball, right? I think part of the problem is some of the persons who are making these rules have never played football. That's a big problem.
There you go.
That's a big problem.
There you go.
Yo, that's the best thing you've ever said.
It's a big problem.
The only sensible thing you've said.
I've said many sensible things.
That originally, in about February or March, they said that from the ball hits the hand, the play is dead, right? That was the rule that we saw in February, and then we had the break. Now we saw in a Chelsea match where the ball hit Kai, but it was played out, and they said that it was 3 passes.
They're different phases.
Yeah.
However, in my interpretation of it, I'm a Chelsea fan. I think if that ball doesn't hit Kai's hand, we don't score that goal, right? And I think that's important because it comes over and it actually hit him hand, and then the defender actually play it out. So there are 2 touches of the ball since it hit him hand. So they're saying it's not directly involved in the goal. So it's not like he brought it down and then he kicked it into the goal. However, it hit him on his hand right here, and it was fortuitous that it led to a goal. So you have to look at that now because we gain an advantage. We don't demand there the ball go outside. So those are the things you need to look at. Does he gain an advantage from it? And does he have reasonable time to move his hand out of the way?
Yeah, and here's the thing, Kevin, and this is what I don't understand about VAR and the whole technology thing, right? Technology is there to help the game.
Yes.
The referee has an option to go to the screen and look. So it's supposed to enhance the quality of the game, which is where my problem is, because and that explanation that Kevin gave was spot on, right? So yes, it wasn't directly involved, but if the ball is coming in and I take down the ball with my hand and put it on the ground, and I'm being extra, of course, but I'm just giving an example. And then 2-3 plays later, that ball ends up in the back of the net, the handball was still involved in the goal. It probably wasn't directly involved, or it wasn't the touch after the handball that led to the goal, or I didn't push it in the goal. But the fact of the matter is that you're supposed to be able to look at it and assess the situation and say, okay, the ball touched Kai Havertz's hand, 2 plays later, end up in the goal. Question, and this is Kevin's question. If that ball doesn't touch Kai Havertz's hand, is it still a goal?
Yeah.
And if the answer to that question is if it touches his hand, it is a goal, then...
Yeah, you make a very good point, Danny, but I don't have a problem with VAR or the idea of VAR.
Yeah, me neither.
What I have a problem with is the rules. Because when you create a rule now, so what you're forcing out of the game is really the decision making of the referee. And just using subjective nature, just overall thinking to make a decision. What you're telling them is to stick to a rule. If the ball hit here and a man hit so the penalties that was given this week, a man heading the ball, a man is standing in, for those who have played football before, which is why I applaud Kevin's point about not playing football. this is not natural.
Yeah,
So it's a natural
This
position
is
to
not a
stand like this.
natural
Exactly.
position, and
You're
you're
going to get
forcing
beaten.
players to.
Yeah.
You have to get beaten as a defender, because if a man
If
fake
you
and go
check
one
in,
way,
Because
you're dead.
you
just
get-
look at it
you're going to
logically.
drop.
The hand behind it automatically limits your mobility.
You're off balance. This is natural.
If you move forward, you can drop on
This
your
is
face.
natural. So all
You handle it
if
for
I'm
balance.
a player today, if I was there today and a man faced me like this, I will pretend to cross the ball and kick it on the man. Because guess what? You can target the man and appeal for a penalty. And when the man goes based on the rules, the man can go. And when the referees see it now, the truth is, I don't blame the referees too much. I blame the rules and the rule makers. Because when the referees go and he's enforcing the rule, and if the rule says, boy, if it hit the hand, and the hand is in this quote-unquote unnatural position, which they're quoting that if you're standing like this, it's fairly unnatural, then that's a problem.
Yeah.
And the referee is then going to say, well, it's a penalty based on the rules.
And
But if you, sorry,
man,
me
let's
finish
finish,
this
yeah,
off.
finish, yeah.
If you kind of change, and I don't know the details of the rules up there, so hopefully I'm not talking rubbish, right? But if you adjust the rules to our coach or teach these referees that this is obviously not unnatural. What we saw Mope did in terms of this is unnatural, but what we see is Chris Ward do in Crystal Palace match in terms of getting low and saying like this on the ball hit the man. That's natural.
So they define what unnatural is, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things they said, if your arms are above shoulder length, it's unnatural. So if you're up here, whether it's accidental or not, they might call it hands.
Agreed.
If you extend it too far from your body also, they call it unnatural.
Yeah.
But you know my problem? Oh, sorry, Kevin, finish up. Sorry.
Oh yeah. So one of the things they did, and I think it is down also to the interpretation of the rule. Because I read the rule earlier today, and I'm like, then why are we calling these things handball? Because it does speak about accidental things, and it's an interpretation. And I think the Premier League has gone ahead and interpreted the rule one way, and you've called 2 penalties or 3 penalties that way already. Unless you make a change, I'm gonna go say, why you call this week? And
I didn't call this. So set a precedent.
Because there's an issue in Everton's match also, where Calvert-Lewin had his hand beside, tucked into his body, but the shot was kicked from a decent distance where he could actually get his hand out of the way.
Yeah.
But it was beside his body, but it stopped a shot from being on target. And the ref said, no handball beside his body.
And that is more handball to me. In and him go,
and him go like
and him
this.
lean.
Him go like this. So
I know him a block the shot.
Yeah.
I think it's the interpretation of the rule.
But here's my problem with even the rules, Kevin. You have the option to revisit the decision. So I don't understand why we still get this wrong.
All right.
Because if the rule speaks,
like VAR, yeah.
Yes.
Because if a referee goes to the screen and still make the wrong call, it's unbelievable, which has happened over the weekend.
Exactly. So that's my problem. You have technology to assist. So I don't understand why the rules are not being applied in a sensible manner. Because fine, we've played football long enough or watched football long enough to understand that there's always subjectivity in refereeing, right?
Yeah.
Because 2 referees can look at the exact same situation and make 2 different calls.
Yeah.
And I don't think VAR can take that out of football, because at the end of the day, once the referee can even revisit the screen and look, if he has an interpretation or an understanding of football, a particular understanding, a particular interpretation, his opinion is not going to change.
Yeah.
You understand? So I don't have a problem with VAR in and of itself, or the rules. I have a problem with how the 2 are being used. Because I think VAR is supposed to allow you to make rules that are more sensible, because you have the option to replay. Because before, you were trying to get everything, because guess what? You don't have the option to replay. So you're trying to make the rules as restrictive as possible. Say, okay, you have a set of rules. If the ball hit here, it's a handball automatically. You can understand when you don't have television replay, but you have television replay now. So you can say, okay, there are certain criteria that we can follow, and once we can revisit and say, okay. So even back to the Kai Havertz situation, you can revisit and say, okay, yes, it hit his hand. Yes, there was 3 plays after, but that handball was so integral that it's still a handball and I still can call it.
Yeah.
So I have one point to make. So the guys in general say they don't have a problem with VAR. I have a problem with VAR.
Okay.
And here why I have a problem with VAR. The game in itself, I think, is losing a bit of its spirit. And it comes back to the handball question again. When last year I saw some 3-dimensional lines to call a man offside, and I think it's ridiculous. And why it's ridiculous also, there's an issue in the West Ham and Wolves game earlier today where Antonio was fouled and the ball was still rolling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the free kick was taken early, and West Ham went down the other end and scored. Now,
VAR should be stopped.
If we're going to be that pedantic where we say from not even the natural eye can see whether or not a man is offside, and we're going to call him offside, it will bring certain decisions in the game into question also. We're like, why we didn't call back that? The ball cannot be rolling when to be, and allowed to play. So my problem is, I think with VAR, we are not just trying to eliminate bad calls, because there are bad calls that go the wrong way that are absolutely disgraceful, and you can call them back. But we're trying to get to a level of perfection, which I think is ruining the game.
So Kevin, what I say to you is this, right? That's not a VAR issue, you know.
I agree.
That's not a VAR issue, you know. That's a rules issue. Because VAR is video assistance. That's what it is, you know.
Yeah, man.
So you can set the rules to say what margin of error. So even if you're saying there's an offside,
that's
my problem. So it has nothing to do with VAR. It has to do with the rules.
Yeah.
All right.
Because you can adjust the rules to say, okay, even the VAR room, you can say if there's a certain margin of error, then you can bring it up. You have a certain margin, you have a certain room to play with. So if it's outside of that margin, then it's a call. But if it's within that margin, you leave it to the on-field referee.
You know,
So the rules are there, and that was the point. Sorry, that was the point I was making. You know, if you have the assistance, you can adjust the rules to make the football flow a little bit better.
So here are my problem with the VAR in England, and we saw it in the first part of the season. It was as if VAR was reffing the game, and it created moral hazard, in my opinion, where referees can be poor because they can rely upon VAR. Now, if you look at it was a lot of pressure last year why referees actually went to the monitor.
They didn't.
They just use the headset and say, okay, this is what these guys are saying.
Yeah.
I'm going to work with it. So it is just, as you rightfully say,
I think they went to the monitor one time last year.
It's supposed to assist.
I still give Nketiah a red card. Madness.
It's supposed to assist the referee, but in England, I think it takes over, because even that three-dimensional line thing, I never see it in another league, you know.
Yeah. So what I'll say to you, I don't agree with it, but I don't think that's particularly
the problem,
a VAR
problem.
issue. So you're right. So if you're not seeing it in another league, then right? What it is not VAR, it's Premier League.
Exactly. So and even the three-dimensional line now, why I think they're not using that? Because they're not showing it, because what they show you on the screen is as a function of what the Premier League choose to show the fans to make for viewership. Yeah. Because they're probably using the same principles across the league, but they just don't show it when they're showing what the decision point was.
So I think what the Premier League is doing.
When VAR first came into existence, and they used it for Russia 2018, right? What FIFA had is that they had a committee of referees, right? And their highest ranking referees were in the capital, and there was a center, right? So in each match, that center would monitor. So you have a set referees. So in essence, it's supposed to have consistency in terms of the ruling of the game. Now with the Premier League, you might have a fourth or fifth official at the stadium helping the three referees who are on the field. So sometimes it's that you have different judgments in terms of calls. And that is why one day you look and you say, wow, VAR is doing a brilliant job for this match.
And next game is madness. Because it's who making the calls in the background. And I'm saying, as I said, that VAR is not the problem. It's how they apply VAR and who applies VAR. Because the idea behind VAR is good. I think it is good because what it does, it reduces the errors. And you can set the margins that you want. Remember, you can determine and say, okay, boy, we have a certain confidence interval. Within this, we're fine.
To be fair, right? Why I agree with you, Danny. Because the truth is, I agree with you, Kevin. The millimeter calls and the level of detail where they take 5 minutes to make a call.
Yeah.
If you're going to take 5 minutes to make a call,
better get it right. Yeah.
Right? But let me just finish with 1 point here. Sorry. But last year, even though it was against my side, Arsenal scored. Aubameyang scored a goal against
Brilliant goal.
United, right? Tap in.
Brilliant tap in.
He was onside, right? Yeah. But the linesman flagged him as offside. And when you watch the replay, he was well onside. It was obvious. So VAR helped to get that decision right. Yeah. In the match
Kudos
against
VAR.
Brighton, that Man U played, they call a penalty against Paul Pogba. Never in a million years a penalty. VAR helped to get it right. So with those type of calls, I can't cuss VAR. But to Kevin's point, when you see somebody draw a line and draw this, it
5 minutes and everybody on the field. I
Yeah.
have a point too. In terms of VAR, right? I never know until Saturday, so a game could have blow off and start back. First me I see it, I'm like,
Madness.
game done.
Game done.
The game blew up.
The offense occurred.
The game blew up. The man
The
called out the game.
The offense
If
occurred.
Brighton walk off for the field, the game finished.
Exactly.
Right?
The offense.
Brighton man not no sense because as the game blew off, straight down the tunnel.
No, them on the field are celebrating.
That's not sense.
We keep the ball like empty net.
First thing the keeper first man come off for the field.
Right?
Keeper go straight down the tunnel upon the bus.
Not empty net, right?
Game done.
Alright, well, fair enough, guys.
Remember, the red card can give right. Red card can give after the game and the offense.
Never say a penalty
Give
give, but the game done.
Well, the time to see it. No. Don't let it
I don't know what kind of time. I'm not even Fergie time. I've never seen it.
Fergie have a room. Fergie have a room.
Yo, time to see
Fergie
it.
have a room, Kevin.
Right?
That's it.
Time to see it. No, 3 points.
Yeah, guys, thank you for viewing. That's a wrap up on this week's matches and actually the fiasco with VAR and the handball rule. We'll continue more with the preview for next week's matches.